Asian countries, by and large, are very spooked by ghosts.
My boyfriend came up with what I think is a really funny way to think of horror movies, specifically about the supernatural, where he said when you're looking at American horror movies or like horror movies in Europe, a lot of times the mindset of characters in the movie is, oh no, the thing that we didn't think could happen is happening. But then when you look at something that's happening in an East Asian supernatural horror movie, the mindset changes to, oh no, the thing we always knew could happen is happening.
That's an interesting way to see it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tales of Our Times. This is a show where we discuss the stories that move us, what makes them so meaningful, and why others could or should find them meaningful as well. This is not a spoiler-free show, so bear that in mind as you continue to listen. We tackle books, movies, comics, and more. Where there's a story, there's a reason to read. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, and today, as you guessed, we're doing another Takes of Our Time, this time to get ready for our upcoming Fall Freakout special, where we'll be covering, me and my guest co-host / official month-long host, Michelle Chang, will be covering scary movies from Taiwan and mainly focused on Taiwan. However, during that special, we usually like to try to take some time and focus on what makes these films uniquely Taiwanese, and I always think that we never have quite enough time. So instead, to get a lot of that discussion out of the way, I've invited another guest of mine and a voice I'm sure you all know very well, Hanna Bilinski, who is in charge of the Retro Reels section and basically spends all her time talking about Asian film, to come into the studio with us today and talk about what makes Taiwanese and East Asian films so scary. So, Hanna, welcome to the show again.
Hey.
How are you today?
Well, I swam here, basically. The day we're recording, the big typhoon Ragasa Mufasa is moving past, so we both had to swim here to the studio today.
Yeah. It's also kind of like a very fitting setting for the questions that I'm going to be asking you today.
Totally.
A dark storm. It sort of feels like it's 7 p.m. outside all the time because it's so dark.
Oh, yeah. Yep. This is perfect because I'm actually finishing a Ghost Month series on my program. I try to do that. Yeah, I try to do that every year. Last year it was Japanese horror, and this year it's Thai. Although today's movie's not scary, but it's like ghost stuff.
Okay.
Ghost stuff.
So if you want more ghost movies, you can look at Hannah's Retro Reels special, which Ghost Month is usually about 1 month before October,
right.
But it sort of depends because it's on the lunar calendar. So sometimes it's a little further away, sometimes it's a little closer. Usually follows mostly the month of August, but sometimes bleeds into September,
Correct.
Which I think is probably going to be a good thing for us to bring up, as I guess Ghost Month isn't especially Taiwanese, but is kind of unique to East Asian horror as an idea.
Actually, you're going to get into this.
Yeah, you know what? So let's just get into it with that. So the base level question is, how do you feel about scary movies or horror movies in general?
I'm a big film nerd. I care a lot about like highfalutin, snobby stuff, but I love scary movies.
Yeah.
Even though that's generally not, a classy genre, but sometimes that's what makes it good because it is entertaining. Sometimes you just want to watch something that is thrilling, is fun. And my dad loves scary movies, so he introduced them to me at probably way too young of an age.
This is a common thread, yes.
I was watching like Twilight Zone episodes, so I have a long lineage of watching scary movies. And although I don't like them all, there are certain subgenres of horror that I'm like just
not for me,
just not interested in. Yeah. But others, I'm all about it.
I agree. I mean, I've definitely brought up on the show before, it's often, one, very culturally in tune, but also sort of countercultural by its existence, because it's always pointing out things that pop culture would usually rather ignore. And I could have a whole TED talk about like Sinners, for example, but I think that allows it to say a lot more. In addition to also sometimes just being like a good time.
Yeah. The things... I talked about this, on my own show. The things that scare someone, it's very much based in how you were socialized and your culture growing up, and it is informed by your environment. So that's what can make Asian horror, for example, so different from horror made in the Anglosphere.
Well, and something that I think is very fascinating is that culturally, people are afraid of very different things.
Yeah. It is really fun to ask, why is it scary? Why is it scary? It's a great question, and it always generates some discussion, relating to you personally, really.
Yeah. Getting more into like the Taiwanese of it all then. You are American Taiwanese. And so are there any Taiwanese folk beliefs or superstitions you either learned about when you were older or ideally things that you grew up with? And kind of tagging onto that, like, do you consider yourself a superstitious person?
So everything that I was, I guess, taught to be afraid of or wary of has to do with ghosts, of course.
Yeah,
or demons more generally.
Yeah.
And my family is not very superstitious. There's some that are more superstitious than others. I've heard many things like don't hang your clothes out at night, don't whistle.
Don't whistle at night was a big one for me.
Right, and if somebody calls your name, don't look back over your shoulder, things of that nature. The only one that my family really warned me against was, how when you go around Taiwan and you might come across these smaller shrines, like maybe kind of almost no-name seeming shrines.
Right.
Or it's just...
It seems like it's sort of buried in the mountain or maybe forgotten.
Or it's just like this
dilapidated.
one deity that's like been shut behind the protective barrier.
They're in the little cage.
Yeah. And it's like really small and you don't know who it is. They did tell me to give those a wide berth because that it's not that the deity itself could be malevolent, but that perhaps spirits like to cling to those places. And another interesting thing that I learned actually I did some Mandarin intensive courses at National Taiwan Normal University to become literate. I was illiterate.
Oh, me
mostly.
Too.
And my teacher showed us this thing where it's kind of like astrology, where depending on your birth time and date, you are assigned a number, and the number denotes how heavy your soul is. So it's like 1 through 5, 1 being like very light, 5 being very heavy, and 3 being kind of in the middle. And if your soul, I guess, is on the lighter side, you are able to see spirits. And if you are in the middle, like 2, 3, 4, then you probably don't see anything supernatural and nothing
You're
really...
grounded. You're heavy.
Nothing really happens to you. You're just kind of regular weight. And if you are a 5, if you're heavy, then spirits like to challenge you. So maybe some unfortunate things tend to befall you, like, for example, freak accidents and things of that nature.
Good God. See, here, I was thinking the heaviest one would be great, because then you're like, awesome, I'm super grounded.
You want to be in the middle.
I'm going to be ideally in the middle. Dear God.
But these are the things that I learned, but the only one, like I said, that I really observe is I stay away from little shrines because they are kind of spooky.
They are kind of spooky. They are. It's very much like, I guess, if you remember in Spirited Away, right at the very beginning, when they're going through the forest and you start seeing all the little, like, figures that are kind of knocked over, or they're going through like the empty train station, that sort of feeling of unsettling, that's kind of what it feels like when you see those empty little shrines.
Yes, that's exactly how I feel. Yeah.
So this is interesting because also something we brought up last time is that idea of like the spirit world is very close to us.
Yeah,
either
it's
through
right there.
Yeah, either through ghosts or demons or whatever. And something I've noticed in a lot of Taiwanese horror is I feel like there's this belief that at any point in time, especially if you are cursed or more often in a bad place for whatever reason, you can just kind of slip in and out of the spirit world by accident. And then like when you're there, bad things will happen to you. But you can't really deal with any of it. You just have to try to get out of it. And then that's like your one goal, is if you fall into those places. So I guess building off of that, in what ways do you think that Taiwan's horror movies stand out or kind of blend in with the horror of neighboring countries?
So I haven't watched some of the like really big latest ones like Incantation and I know that was huge recently.
We did that one last year. That one scarred me, and it is really? All about like that kind of like little shrine.
Of course.
Forgotten shrine. Of
course. Yeah, see, that was
I had chills when you were talking about it. I was like, oh God.
But I have I think it's related, played the video game Detention.
I loved Detention. It is related.
And there was a sequel also that was, I forgot what it was called, but it had a different
Devotion.
Story. Devotion. That's
it's
what it
not
was
a
called.
sequel. It's unrelated, but it is by the same studio.
It's by the same studio.
They're both really good.
They're very scary.
Devotion is the worst.
I think
so good.
That one really stuck with me because of the environment being so perfectly Taiwanese, and also detention, which took place in a school. Yeah, which is also Taiwanese schools. They're still very of that military rule era.
Yeah,
and it's reflected.
Even new ones. Yeah,
and it's reflected in the school system to this day. So those games feel super Taiwanese to me as far as Taiwanese horror specifically. I would say, in general, East Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries too, a lot of it is grounded in Buddhism. Yeah. And related cultural / folk religions that may be unique to the specific country that give that a little bit of that local flavor. Twang. But generally, it's about this idea of you get what's coming to you. And I don't see that as much in Western horror, or really not often. It's definitely not like the usual theme. Like the way I was thinking about it recently was that you did something to deserve this. Whereas in Western horror, more often than not, you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Right. You know, the serial killer picked your house. You know what I mean? Whereas in Asian horror, you did something to deserve being haunted or otherwise pursued.
Or if not you, because I would jump off of that. If not you,
then someone in your family.
Or someone in this place. Because I also think Taiwan just really loves the global stigma of like, this is a bad place where something bad happened.
Oh yeah, that's why people are so spooked by apartments where somebody like committed suicide or otherwise died of an unclean manner. Like I said, it goes back to Buddhism. Something about the funeral rite wasn't completed correctly for you, or you died in an unclean way. It's always, it goes back to the religion. In American horror, you might get a little bit of that. There's like a subgenre for like possession.
Sort of like, usually it has to do with the church and demons specifically.
Yeah, in America, you might get, for example, The Exorcist. But that is very much based in Catholicism, but that's not really the main kind of horror. You know, it's something I like, but
yeah, same.
But it's not like the usual horror fare.
Building off of that, is there anything that you've ever seen or you could think that would make horror uniquely Taiwanese? And while I was writing this question, I was struck with something that in the last 4 years or so, getting more into the Taiwanese horror scene from video games and movies. Something that I have sort of felt is that Taiwanese horror feels more lived in, which also could be my bias because I live here. But what I mean by that is that I think it does well with sort of like interpersonal or personal stories and stories that take place in a small, isolated setting. Yeah. Like Detention takes place in one school. Yeah. Devotion is in the apartment. Yeah. The two movies I liked last year were also kind of trapped in one place and really explored characters' personal trauma. And I think comparing it to, for example, horror from Japan or horror from China, those stories often I feel like do more ancient evil that's like always been here. Yep. And in that way, I feel like Taiwanese horror is sort of more like the Appalachian Mountains of Asian horror.
Saying. There's more of a
countryside vibe to it.
Yes, it's more intimate. It's less that this particular spot is haunted and more that it's haunted by somebody you know kind of deal, or you knew, or that you wronged by your own sort of evil, I guess.
There's always a very personal element to it, perhaps, is also kind of where it is. Like, even with the different monsters that we explored last year, and now I'm thinking of like the tag-along. And tag-along haunts people by grabbing your friend's voice and then using it to call your name so that you do that, you look behind you, and then it grabs you, right? But in that way, it's like a chain of personal events that happen to you. So going broader, what do you think are some themes that are seen in Taiwanese horror? And what do you think that they may say about the underlying fears of Taiwanese society?
I think a lot of it has to do with being afraid of not just the supernatural, but of the evil that other people are capable of doing by you.
And not in the random violence of a home break-in.
No, it's more like the kind of violence that can happen between members of a family. And that can range, from like really gruesome stuff like beating or drowning or something awful like that to kind of abusive behaviors in general.
Yeah.
I think because Taiwan, like the culture is so family oriented and so based on these often patriarchal structures in families, that a lot of the violence, I guess you could say, that occurs in Taiwan happens within the family unit. How can I put this? We'll just say abuse.
Yeah.
I think that features quite bigly.
Yeah. I'm also thinking, while you discuss that and you brought up like the schools always kind of go back to that like military occupation, I think there's also a lot of horror in Taiwan. There's a lot of horror in Taiwan that draws off of themes very specific to military occupation, because that was really recent, like relative memory-wise, and like wrongs done through some kind of literal invading force. And there's a lot of evil that can get tied directly back to that you see in and out. And sometimes it's just name dropped, like throughout the story, like, oh, people tried to get rid of this spirit back when the Japanese were here. But
white terror. Definitely, you're touching on something that I think is really important. And it's not just family stuff, but also Taiwan does have kind of a bloody recent history. Not it's at least compared to, say, the United States, which has lived in relative, hold on. I'll put it this way. America's never been invaded, never been occupied, never been under overt military rule. It's a kind of heavily policed state.
Maybe another way to say that is like the horror when it comes to like occupation in Taiwan is coming from the people who were occupied versus like in Europe and in America, it usually comes from the quote unquote winners. Like we were the ones who occupied. So we're afraid of the things that we have stolen, like Indian burial grounds, because we know we did something bad. Yeah. Versus a long time ago, we used to live in peace, and then people came here and they ruined our relationship with this spirit or the land, or they committed such violence that now this place we loved is tainted.
Yes.
And once you have your eyes opened to it, you can see play out, and sometimes in very overt ways, like with detention, where it's literally all about the white terror.
Yep.
So what is something that you think people should know, either as a mindset, trope, or anything else before venturing into East Asian horror?
I think the main thing was, like I said, having some cursory knowledge of Buddhism is really helpful for understanding East Asian horror and Taiwanese horror, but East Asian horror more generally.
Extension.
Yes, because there's just so much from the religion that people draw their fears from. So knowing about that is not necessary, but really helpful.
Honestly, even for like recognizing things, like last year we were talking about the yellow tag, the yellow cleansing tag.
Yeah.
And like knowing which things are supposed to be signs of safety, which things are supposed to be danger signs. Right. Finally, do you have any horror movie recommendations for our listeners?
So I just rewatched the original 2004 Thai version, Shudder. Now, there's an American remake. It's terrible. Don't watch it.
I've only heard of the American one.
So bad. But the Thai version is really, really good. I think it, as far as the ghost subgenre goes, that one, it's better than a lot of the Japanese ghost stories that kind of had a moment in the United States. Shudder is really good. It's really worthwhile. Everyone should watch it. And after you watch it, you can come listen to me talk about it.
Watch it first if you can handle it.
It's cool. It's really good.
Hannah, thank you so much for coming on my show. You made me all excited to get back into these movies again.
I love movies.
Going forward, listeners, we're going to be revisiting some of your old favorite things. You know that we'll be doing supernatural horror with me, and we'll be doing more of the body horror and slasher horror with Michelle. And coming up next week, we're going to get it started with The Rope Curse, which really touches on a lot of these things we were talking about. Wrong done to you, interpersonal drama, sort of betrayals, and a very small setting. If you're interested in that, tune in next week for the beginning of our Fall Freakout period. This has been Tales of Our Time. I was Amanda Stevens with today's guest,
Hanna Bilinski,
host of Retro Reels, who also just finished her own spooky Ghost Month theme. Right. So we have all of your supernatural needs here, but We'll see you next time.